can now keep the phone down.
Hello.
You are audible, sir.
Sir, you are live.
You are live.
Today,
I think we can begin, sir.
Yeah.
So good afternoon, everybody. So today Participantled sir is with us. So he will share some of the ideas on how to generate and sustain the dialogue, which is a very, very important aspect of our course transaction, where mentor helps in generating the dialogue in the group, and some thoughts from Participantled sir today about that. Hope all of you find it useful. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Varun. Today I would like to discuss the importance of generating dialogues and the strategies for developing oracy among adult participants. Because our ELC program, English Language Enrichment program, is based on the principle of dialogues, generating dialogues. Because we believe that we learn a language only when we speak in that language. Our aim is to use the language, not to know about the language. And just as children learn a language only by interacting in the language, we adults also, when we want to learn a language or enrich our language skills, we have to be engaged in an intelligible, mutually intelligible dialogue. But there are some techniques of initiating a dialogue, sustaining a dialogue, and making the dialogue interesting. And herein lies the importance of oracy. Normally, we talk a lot about foundational literacy and numeracy. In our schools, very often oracy is not given due importance. We are very good listeners, but we are not good speakers. But in order to be proficient in a language, we need both the listening ability and the speaking ability. They are complementary to one another. Now comes the question, what is oracy? Oracy is the ability to express oneself fluently and grammatically in speech. Now here, fluency and grammatically and speech, these three words are very important. There is often a confusion among language users that, well, I don't know the grammar of a language, how can I be fluent? Or, I am very fluent in a language, but I don't know the grammar. Well, when children speak a language fluently, they don't bother about grammar. Grammar comes automatically. Grammar, the moment I'm talking to you this afternoon, I'm using grammar, but I'm not using grammar consciously. I'm not thinking of SOV, subject, verb, object, or subject, object, verb, not that. Here, my primary focus is to share my ideas with all of you. And for that, meaning making is more important than being obsessed with grammatical accuracy. Because we have seen, all of us, we have the common experience of children learning a new language. That when fluency comes, grammar can't be far behind. Grammar has to come, but not the conscious grammar, not the formal grammar, not the rules of grammar, but grammar in practice, grammar in use. And therefore, this course, ELC course, is based on the principle of developing and strengthening our ability to speak fluently. But it does not mean that we are ignoring grammar. But it also doesn't mean that we are going to teach grammar consciously. We are neither negating grammar nor are we promoting grammar. What we are doing, promoting fluency, and along with the fluency, grammar will come. And because oracy is nothing but engaging with others through spoken language. Now, we, the students of language, we know the spoken variety of a language comes first. There are many languages in this world which are only in the spoken form, but they are very rich language. And if we don't take care of the spoken variety of the language, then no communication can take place. Because when we talk to someone, we don't write and send the letter to someone. We don't use the alphabet. We don't use the writing system. It is through the production of some specific sounds of a particular language that we communicate. And the first step for an effective communication is the use of the target language in a spoken form for meaning making. And now look at the word engaging. Because if we can't engage with others, no communication can take place. Communication itself is a two-way traffic. Only a lunatic, a mad person talks to himself or herself. But two normal human beings, when they engage in a conversation, there are two parties. One is the addresser and other is the addressee. Now I am the addresser now. I'm addressing you and you are the addressee. And that's why my whole objective is to engage with you. And it is through the spoken language. Spoken language is a medium. And therefore, I should be very careful in using my spoken language to communicate my ideas. And I expect that you also listen to me. You grasp the meaning of my communication, both the surface meaning and the deeper meaning, and you respond to it, then I respond to it, and it goes on and on. In your normal communication, we don't utter a particular sentence and they say, well, stop. Now you speak. Now then you speak, then I will say, yes, now I am speaking. No, it doesn't happen like that. In a natural communication, we know when to stop, we know when to take part, we know when to give pace to others, we know when to modulate our voice, we know when to change. Because a normal human being does not speak the way in which we write a communication. We start a sentence, then midway we stop, we change the direction. Speaking is like the flow of a river. A river has no predestined course. A river flows naturally. Here now it goes to the left, now it goes to the right, and ultimately it reaches the ocean. Similarly, when you start a communication, it may take different directions depending on the way in which my addressee is receiving my message. I use a difficult word. Then I realize that the person to whom I am talking is unable to understand the meaning. Well, I paraphrase it. I change the vocabulary. I change the sentence structure. And I make it comprehensible to the addressee. Therefore, oracy is a skill which should be developed systematically, keeping in view its importance in the field of communication. Now, Well, here is a text. Now I am using Oracy in a classroom. I want to teach my students or the participants how to go ahead and how to enhance the Oracy. And now normally what happens, all of us know the knowledge is developed only when we proceed from the known to the unknown. Now here is a paragraph which I am sure is known to almost all of you. It is about the Pochampalli sari, which is quite well known throughout the world, originates of Telangana. And here you can see I have highlighted some words in red. That is in Nalgonda district of Telangana. It is a traditional means of livelihood, transfer intricate geometric pattern, and natural dyes. Now, if I ask you, what does it remind you? If it's possible, in the chat box, you can just mention what it reminds you. The moment you look at this paragraph and the picture, what does it remind you? When did you purchase a Pochampalli sari last time? What do you think of its future? How is it different from other saris? Then what about the patterns? And then, in view of the competition that this traditional sari is facing today, what is its future? Are you familiar with some schemes, government initiatives for popularizing this sari in the other parts of the world? Now, so many questions come to your mind, and you can start a discussion on this, because that topic itself is known to most of the participants. It is familiar, it is comprehensible, it is very near to our heart. We are proud of it, and that's why we can talk a lot. We can go on and on. And this is the way in which we can start our journey towards Oracy, developing Oracy in the classroom. Now, in order to develop Oracy in an artificial setting, that is a classroom, what is the first requirement? First is a talk-rich environment. The environment itself should be such that it gives rise to spontaneous talking. Because you see, the moment you are in the earlier slide, I showed you a picture of the Pochampalli sari. The moment you see the picture, nobody should tell you, no need of telling you that, look, now you tell me what you think. The moment you see, oh yeah, that's right, that's Pochampalli sari. I know. Last time, when I went to Hyderabad, I bought this sari for my wife or for my sister. And it was so expensive. And it goes on and on. And you know how the price, what the price range. And you know that how earlier it was not that expensive. And now, earlier, for Air India, Air hostess, they used to wear this sari. You can recognize them. Even when they go abroad, people could recognize them, because it is the Pochampalli sari was the indication of Indian identity. And now this is the way in which you go on talking, and nobody can stop. And that's why, in order to make the environment talk rich, we should select a topic which is known to the participants, which is challenging to the participants, which is the participants feel a bond, an emotional bond to the topic, and then they can't resist the temptation of taking part in the discussion. And that's why that's the importance of talk-rich environment. And then comes the question of participant-led discussion. In any oracy class, in order to generate dialogues, the mentor or the teacher or the facilitator should take a back seat. You show the pictures, prompt them to think about it, and start talking. We are not only mentoring, we are monitoring. Just as the pilot monitors the movement of the aircraft, in the talk-rich environment, we monitor. And it is participant-led discussion that participants may take it different ways. And of course, there is a precaution. Sometimes we may see that some participants may try to derail it, take it to a direction to which you don't want to venture. In that case, very politely, in a very subtle manner, you have to guide the participant so that the participant goes to the direction to which you want the participant to speak. Though it is participant-led, and though the mentor appears to be invisible, but in reality, the mentor is not invisible. The mentor is all-powerful, but should not come to the forefront. Give the participants enough freedom. They may sometimes ignore, they may forget that there is someone who is monitoring, and they develop a sense of ownership of the discussion that goes on, and that is very important. And along with and then comes the question of inquiry-based discussion. There must be, they must feel inquisitive. Well, the example that I showed you earlier, the moment I gave the example of the Pochampoli and that picture and the paragraph, that's why they feel the temptation of just inquiring. Well, how did it originate? How did it originate? How is it contributing to the economy of Telangana, to the economy of India, and what are the other factors? Now, all these things, they should develop during the discussion, that kind of inquiry, that kind of inquisitiveness, that kind of joy of exploring the topic, the joy of adding some new information. And they will feel a pride that, well, I have contributed. Because we have seen in any group discussion, if you see that nobody takes your argument into consideration, nobody has taken your argument seriously, then you feel bad. That's why everybody wants to be appreciated. Everybody wants to be acknowledged. Everybody wants to be appreciated. That's why we should give a chance to all the participants to add to the discussion. And as a mentor, it is my duty to encourage the participants, however ordinary may be the argument, however simple it may be. Giving a constructive feedback is very important. When somebody says, yes, I know this Pochampoli sari, there is nothing great about that. We know it from our childhood. Oh, yes, you know it. But have you seen the kind of pattern, the geometrical pattern in the sari? What does it remind you? Now, how can you use this in your maths class? Can you just compare this sari with some other saris and make a comparative study? Now, if you were the manager of a factory where this Pochampoli sari is produced, then what will you do? This is the way in which we should help them to be engaged in the discussion. And for doing that, they need language. Now, what kind of language? Language, first of all, it is the vocabulary. you must have the vocabulary necessary for discussing a particular topic. Now, it may so happen that in a physical science class or in a biological science, if the topic belongs to a biological science, then there are some specialized words. Now, please don't introduce the specialized word in the beginning. As it was pointed out earlier, from the known to the unknown. And that's why even when you discuss, say, air pollution, water pollution, and all the technical terms that comes along with that, start with simple vocabulary and gradually, slowly, you introduce some vocabulary items which are specialized. And what will be the result? That, you may not know the meaning of a particular word, but while you speak, you must have noticed that we don't, it may so happen that we don't know the meanings of all the words, but from the context itself, we can understand the meaning. And that's enough. Because our objective is not to teach the meaning of a particular vocabulary item. Our objective is communication. Our objective is to keep them engaged in a talk-rich environment. Therefore, if the participants don't know one or two words, we should not be very much anxious, worried. Oh, what will happen to me? They don't know these words. Well, first of all, we have to think that whether they're able to grasp the meaning. Meaning is more important than the meaning. Meaning of the message is more important than the meaning of a particular word, vocabulary. And that's why I think we should not be too much obsessed with the dictionary or the lexical meaning of a vocabulary item. This is the number one. This is the number one point. Then there is a question of convention. That some words, some expressions can't be used in a particular manner. Then the question of, say, language conventions, that you are using interrogative sentences. Now, while using the interrogative sentence, why do you put the stress? How do you place your request? Can you add another point, please? Instead of saying, okay, you tell me, you give another reason. You give another reason, this sentence, and can you please try adding another point? It makes a gulf of difference. And that is the convention of a language. All languages have their own conventions. And that cannot be taught with the help of grammar. That can be taught only when we prompt them to use the language. Conventions, just as not only linguistic conventions, think of other social conventions. Well, in India, when we meet someone, we just put our hands together. And nobody can teach us that when you meet somebody, you just do like this. That is only when you interact with the people, you observe people, oh yes, Indians welcome somebody like this. Now these are and that's why in order to learn these linguistic conventions, we must be immersed, we must be involved in the use of language. And then comes grammar. And already I mentioned it, that what it should be, how it should go on. That grammar, that is grammar in context. Grammar in context, not grammar in isolation. Now, to summarize what I have discussed till now, I am drawing your attention to these 4 key points. One is the challenging topics. The topic itself must be challenging. That I must feel the urge to speak. Because if I give a topic like that weather in Hyderabad, well, everybody knows it. What's so great about that? And moreover, we should always remember that the participants with whom we are interacting, they are adult participants. We can't ask them to sing a rhyme. We can't ask them to just make simple sentences that, well, can you paraphrase this sentence or like that? They won't be interested. And if they're not interested, they won't speak. And therefore, it should be challenging. Now, that is another, I think I should qualify it. The topic should be challenging, but it should not be too challenging. If it is too challenging, that is highly incomprehensible, highly daunting, then the participants won't speak. They will keep mum. If it is too easy, not challenging, they won't feel interested. And that's why we should make a balance between too challenging, highly challenging topic and a trivial topic. Topic should not be trivial, should not be too ordinary. Again, it should not be too challenging. And that is something which a mentor or a facilitator who manages the discussion should take a call. It may depend on the age of the participants, their background. Now, if our participants are from school teachers, that their level, their knowledge of the world and the topics which are interesting to them, but which are a bit challenging. And that's why we should select only those topics which are moderately, I repeat, moderately challenging. That is the first. Second is that sequencing ideas. Give them some time. Sometimes, due to the paucity of time, we try to, we ask, okay, please, you say something. You say, what do you think? Well, give me some time, because I am not a parrot. I must, first I get a topic. I must think of it. Depending on my previous knowledge, I should organize my ideas, and only then I can speak. And that's why sequencing the ideas is very important. Fortunately, in our case, the participants are adults. Mentally, emotionally, socially, they are quite advanced people, knowledgeable people. They know a lot about it. It may so happen they know more about the topic than what we know. And that's why please allow them to sequence their ideas. And this sequencing is almost, like allowing a plane to run on the runway. Because you can't fly without running on the runway for some time. Similarly, you give them the time to sequence their ideas, to organize their ideas, to consolidate their points of view, and let them speak. They will do it. All that they need is the encouragement, is a conducive atmosphere for being engaged in a dialogue. And the key vocabulary, that which are the words which they must use. Now, as a facilitator, you know the topic. You are well versed with the topic. And that's why during the discussion, if you find that they are not using the key vocabulary, they are not using the appropriate vocabulary, then you supply the vocabulary. Already you are familiar with the topic, and they are intelligent enough. They will just pick it up and they will use it. And then another is the turn taking. Now, sometimes it so happens that we ignore the importance of turn taking. That is when to stop and when to allow some others to speak. Now, somebody is speaking, then if in the middle of the sentence I start speaking, then obviously he will feel disturbed. He may be annoyed. He may stop. He may not speak at all. And therefore, when to speak and how to speak, both are equally important. And for that, oracy demands that along with speaking, listening is very important. We have seen in many group discussions what happens. People don't listen. They have their preconceived notion. They want to talk themselves. What others are talking, they are least interested. Now, this is an art which must be developed, and we must encourage the participants to develop the habit, to develop the practice of listening attentively, listening meaningfully, listening respectfully, and then responding at the appropriate time, appropriate moment. And here, this is the importance of turn taking. If these 4 key points are remembered, are taken care of during any discussion, group discussion, I think the discussion will go in the right direction. Now, here I would like to draw your attention to the 4 responsibilities that the mentors should have and should be very particular. Encourage the participants to articulate their opinion. All normal human beings have their opinions. And sometimes divergent opinions. Your opinion may differ from that of mine totally. No problem. But we should, as a mentor, we should encourage the participants to their own opinion. It may be right, it may be wrong, it may be partial, it may be off the point, but even then, we should encourage them to articulate their opinion. Because the very fact that somebody is speaking indicates that somebody is interested in our topic. Now, just articulating the opinion is not enough. Because we should encourage the participants to defend their opinion. Now, the earlier example of Participantled studies. Now, somebody says that, it is, unless it is modernized, there is no future for this. And, or the workers who are working day and night, they are in the industry, they are not well paid. Well, you may be right, you may be wrong, but you must be able to defend your opinion. And as a mentor, it is my responsibility to encourage them to defend their opinion. Okay, do you think like that? Oh, that's fine, good. But can you please give reasons, or what are the reasons that prompt you to articulate this kind of opinion? And then next is encourage the participants to listen attentively to the opinions of others. This point already I have referred to, because encourage the participants to listen attentively to the opinions of others, not only attentively, even respectfully. I may disagree with you, that's no problem, but I must respect your point of view. I should be ready to defend my opinion, but I should be ready to defend my opinion with my own opinion, with evidence. And for that, the participants need time. They must be prepared. And as a mentor, I think it is my responsibility to give them enough scope, to give them enough time, and if necessary, to supply them some of the points which they can use. And encourage the participants to respond to the opinions of others. Otherwise, what happens in a group discussion, that is, it becomes a one-way traffic. somebody says something and goes on talking and without respecting others' opinion or without defending his or her own opinion with evidence, and that may spoil or that may affect the smooth flow of interaction. Because as a mentor, my responsibility is to sustain that discussion. Initiating a discussion is not that difficult, but sustaining a discussion is very, very difficult. And for that, the mentor should have a full command, full grasp of the subject matter. The mentor must have some ready-made answer questions, and if necessary, some answers also. To supply some of the options, because the moment a participant articulates his or her opinion, and you realize that there is something wrong, he is not in a position to substantiate, then you as a mentor, you put forward some arguments and you say, oh, I think you mean that. Do you think that there was a study like this? And do you know that this news item appeared in this paper and it also discussed this issue? How do you think about that? And then he gets a hint and he goes on extending his argument. This is the way in which we can proceed. So I was talking of oracy, but oracy has some soft skills also. Physical, linguistic, cognitive, and social. There are other soft skills also, but I think these 4 skills are very important. Just think about these soft skills. Since our childhood, we are familiar with oracy. We speak in our mother tongue. And even in mother tongue also, when we speak in our mother tongue, we give importance to all those 4 sub-skills: physical, linguistic, cognitive, and social. Now, what do you mean by physical? First of all, it is a voice projection. There is the tonal variation, the tone, the way in which you modulate. Can you help me, please? I'd like to emphasize on this point. Oh, yes, that's exactly, that's the point. Because in English, you know, we have these different words called tones: rising tone, falling tone, level tone, at least these 3. And therefore, as a non-native speaker, many of us, we face this problem, because the tonal variation of our mother tongue, of our Indian languages, and the tonal variation of English, there's a difference. And even a simple sentence, what's your name, please? Now, what's your name, please? Now, yeah, obviously you are raising your voice. And could you give me any specific example, please? Oh, yes, that's nice. Oh, lovely. Yes, I also thought like that. Now, this is the way in which, as a facilitator, you must be in a position to have that kind of tonal variation, voice projection, voice modulation. That is very important, because that gives that gives brings the participants to his or her comfort zone. The participants must feel that you as a facilitator, you also are on the same boat. You are not a dictator. You are not here to somebody to dictate. And that's why this, by your voice projection, by your tonal variation, you develop that kind of intimacy, the oral intimacy. And then if it's a face-to-face group discussion, using eye contact. Using eye contact is very important, because as our normal discourse also, whenever you talk to someone, we look at his or her eyes. Of course, using eye contact does not mean staring at somebody. Using eye contact is very important, because sometimes the meaning gets added or extra importance when we have that kind of eye contact. Then there is a question of gesture, the body language, and the clarity of pronunciation. There are many words in English in which the accent makes a difference. It's a product, or it's a produce, and it is produced. Now, produce and produce, they're two different words. Now, it is that way in which you pronounce the word. It may so happen that it does not sound like the British accent or the American accent, but as long as you can convey the meaning, it's fine. And therefore, these physical properties, these physical attributes of oracy, voice projection, tonal variation, using eye contact, gesture, body language, clarity of pronunciation, as a facilitator, we must be very careful about these things, because these are non-linguistic skills, physical skills, but for sustaining a healthy discussion, animated discussion, a cordial discussion, a fruitful discussion, these physical sub-skills of oracy are very important. Now comes the question of linguistic. Already we discussed it. Question of vocabulary. The vocabulary, there is a question of active vocabulary and passive vocabulary. Now, in our day-to-day life, we use a number of words, but we also know a number of words which we don't use in real life. But when somebody uses those words, we understand the meaning. It is a passive vocabulary. There is no sharp distinction between active vocabulary and passive vocabulary. A vocabulary which is passive today may be active tomorrow. Because a word like that, oh, that's an extraordinary situation. No, extraordinary is extraordinary. In our normal discourse, we don't use this word. Well, you say, oh, that's an unusual situation. But somebody uses the word extraordinary. Well, if necessary, I can use its synonym. If I find that a speaker has used a word whose meaning may not be known to majority of the participants, as a facilitator, I can supply the synonyms and make things comfortable for others. And then comes the question of register. Now, science and technology, or sports, music. Now, all these disciplines have their own register, own vocabulary. Now, depending on the theme that you are using. Now, you are using a theme from physical science. Now, you are using a theme from maths. Now, there are some words which are used in this particular theme, may not be used in some other themes. Now, for that, as a facilitator, even before the beginning of the discussion, you can introduce those vocabulary items through a discussion. You refer to an article, you refer to any talk, or you just initiate a discussion where you use some of those words and familiarize them. Because there is no point in asking them, you go to a dictionary, consult a dictionary, learn these words. Well, we don't learn a language by memorizing the vocabulary items of the language. Repeating hundreds of words does not help someone to learn a language. Otherwise, everybody would have learned a language. You take a dictionary, Advanced Learners Dictionary of English, and every day you learn 5 new words. How does it help? It doesn't help at all. Because that word, in which context it is used, that is important. And that can be done only by using the language in that particular context. And then using metaphor, humor, irony, all these things are also equally important. Because sometimes we feel we have a wrong notion that in any academic discussion, there is no scope for humor or irony. Not that. Because in a discussion or in a focus group discussion, we are not writing a research paper. We are not just preparing a highly academic, an article for academic journal. We are using language in a real life situation. And therefore, in a real life situation, when you speak, we use a number of metaphors, a number of humor. Now, earlier I was using the metaphor of a plane running on the runway. Now, that is a metaphor. I'm using the metaphor of a plane running on the runway before takeoff. Now, if you use metaphors like that at appropriate point of time during the discussion, people will remember. Because each metaphor is a picture. And every picture tells a story. Every picture tells a story. And therefore, while initiating a discussion, try to create as many mental pictures as possible. It will help the participants. And then comes the question of cognitive. Linguistic comes the question of cognitive. Now here, the content is important. Structure is important. What is the content? What is the structure? How is the topic presented? It is the beginning, it is the middle, it is the end. And then the question of clarifying, the seeking information. When a person is speaking, he or she should seek information, can clarify, can seek clarification through questioning, and we can give reasons by reasoning, and all these are cognitive sub-skills. Content, structure, clarifying, and reasoning. And these are the cognitive aspects. And then comes the last one is social. Already I discussed it. Social, by social I mean turn taking. That when I should start speaking and when I should stop. In a group discussion, you might have noticed that some people don't know when to stop. And it is the responsibility of the mentor to regulate it. And then managing interactions, managing and listening actively and understanding others. Just listening is not enough. Listening is not only a linguistic skill, it is a social skill. And as a social skill, it comes under oracy. Now, I would like to refer to a particular lesson of the English language and enrichment course of elementary, look at it. Now, the task is in smaller groups, read learning Gujarati from friends, not learning Marathi in schools. Now, in the lesson, there are only 2 questions are given. Why are children not learning new languages in schools? And have you also learned any other language with friends? How did you learn? How do you use those strategies to learn English? Now, as a facilitator, we must be ready with a number of other questions also. Because you see, it is not an examination that they will prepare these 2 answers and they will produce these 2 answers in the exam and they will get marks. These questions are meant to trigger a discussion, and there can be a number of others also. And for that, I think the mentor or the facilitator must read the passage before very clearly. I have underlined some sentences. I learned completely a new language in the most natural way. What's the natural way? Or look at another. You can't just know a language by force. Now, how do you respond to this sentence? You can't just know a language by force. This can lead to a very lively discussion. We know the history of the world, how one language was imposed on another, how conquerors tried to try to do away with the language of the conquered people. Even in England and France, you know how French became a language of some of the southern part of some parts of England. And this can just give rise to that, you know, that somebody will say, oh yes, I know, language does not come out of the barrel of the gun, language comes out of the heart. And there can be discussion. And now this is because as a facilitator, we must read it, we must be ready with supplementary reading materials, we must be ready with some supplementary questions, and only then we must ensure, we can ensure that we will be able to sustain the discussion. Or think of the others. This is from day 3, in which they are asked to watch and reflect on a video, new experiment in self-teaching by Sugata Mitra. And there are some questions, but in addition to these questions, we can think of some questions which will trigger an animated discussion. And this brings us to another important aspects, the types of questions for generating discussion: factual, inferential, evaluative, hypothetical, prediction, text to self, text to world, and intertext to text to text. Now, some people may think that factual questions are not important. Factual questions are important, but factual questions cannot generate a discussion. Factual questions are necessary to prepare the participants for the discussion. In the first example of the picture that I showed you of Participantled study, now we can ask a number of factual questions. Name the district of Telangana where this study is originated. That's a factual question. But it will be just yes, no. Just you refer to the text, you answer it. But in order to generate discussion, you go for inferential questions. You infer the meaning. Why was this this passage written? The paragraph of Participantled study that I showed you in the beginning, Now, what was the purpose? Why did the author write it, infer it? What purpose does it serve? What can be the source of this article? And then there are some questions which are evaluative. You have to evaluate. You have to compare it with some other texts. Or you have to evaluate it, or it may be hypothetical that if you are the manager or if you are the public relations officer of a company which exports Pochampally study to the USA, what are the steps that you will take to popularize this study abroad? If you were the public relations officer or salesperson who is entrusted with the responsibility of promoting this study abroad, what are the initiatives that you will take? Place yourself in that position. Then obviously, that is a hypothetical question, and it will be an open-ended question, and you can or predict. Then how do you visualize the future of this Pochampally study, and how do you and what could be the future of this particular product? That is you can ask the participants, and they will come with different answers from their respective points of view. And then text to self. Again, that you place yourself in that position and you answer, you talk about this topic. And text to the world. Text to world means you place this particular text in the context of larger world and you talk about that. And intertext or text to text. Now, this is this example that I gave you of the study and the note. Now, that is about a particular study. Now, can you just find out a similar text about any other study which is popular in India of another state, and compare the two texts and make a comparative statement, discuss on it, merits and demerits, and the advantages, disadvantages, the cost of production of this study and that study, and a lot of discussions can go on and on. And therefore, as a facilitator, my responsibility is to prepare different types of questions, and which must be open-ended questions, not closed-ended questions. Of course, I'll discuss this just now. What do you mean by open-ended and closed-ended? Now you see, how are you? I'm good. Do you play cricket? Oh, yes. Oh, no. Are you tired? Yes. Oh, no. That's okay. Did you send the message? No. Silence. Will you join me? No. Why should I? Stop. Silence. These are the close-ended questions. That conversation closed. Full stop. And therefore, please don't ask close-ended questions during any discussion. Because our participants are adults. They know a lot. They have so many things to say. If we ask them to speak in their mother tongue, they will go on talking for hours together. And therefore, we should ask them such questions which motivate them to go on speaking. And therefore, if we ask them yes/no questions, or questions which are required questions which require one word answer or one simple sentence, that is nothing but waste of our time, and it kills the spirit of discussion, and therefore we should avoid it. But if you say, could you tell me about your problem? Or could you tell me about your problem, please? Oh, don't tell me. There are so many problems, Even, this ELC course is a problem. So many tasks, so many activities, how to upload the audio. And, I uploaded the audio, but it did not open. And there's the problems and two problems. They were go on talking. Why did you opt for this job? So I'm giving some examples. Why did you opt for this job? Well, I opted for this job because I want to go abroad. Or you go abroad and I'm tired of this job. This is too much. It is telling upon my health, and it goes on and on. She goes on and on. How could you send the message to your boss? And then you ask such a question, the person will start speaking, justifying his or her activities. What's on your mind? Yes, there are so many things in my mind. While I'm listening to this discussion, so many things comes to my mind. And if you give me a chance, I can speak for another hour after listening to you for 1 hour. You may think like that. And you must have jotted down some points and you feel tempted. And if I ask you these open-ended questions, you feel that I do care for you. And this is the importance of open-ended questions. Now I'm taking as an example from ELC's secondary theme. And here you see use of video games to teach maths. And here you see first task is justify your views with specific examples you have come across. Now this question, starts with the video, content of the video. The speaker here mentions how math is taught to a child as compared to how a child is engaged in language activity or playing a sport. Do you agree with it? Yes, no. That is a close-ended question. Do you agree with it? Yes, I agree. Yes, I don't agree. That's all right. But soon after that, I am asking an open-ended question. That justify your views. And not only that, with specific examples. For that, I should give enough time to the participants to think. As I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, that we should allow the participants to organize the thought, content, and to justify a particular point of view. This thinking process is very important. Second task. In the talk, there are a few games and activities listed that get an individual to think mathematically. Mention any such game you have played and share your strategy to win it. You see, this is a question which is text to self. In the earlier slide, when I mentioned text to self, you see that already in the talk of this that you find in the video game, use of video games to teach maths. There is a talk, and on the refers to this talk, I am asking the participants that mention any such game that you have played and share your strategy to win it, or describe the merits and demerits of games played by you in your childhood versus games played by your daughter, son, children of the present generation. It is an open-ended question. And if you ask a teacher who has kids or who has children, he can very well relate it to his personal life. And he can give you some very strange and very unusual response and very original response without any preparation, merits and demerits. And he says, oh, don't tell me, I can notice the differences. Earlier, we used the football field, we used to play outdoor games. Now, a child, soon after the birth, the child is busy with the gadgets and this present generation. And then comes the question of the COVID-19 and how COVID-19 changed this generation. There's on and on, it goes on. It is very difficult. You will see that sometimes it is very difficult to stop because everybody has a tale to tell. Everybody has a story to tell. All of us, we want to speak, but we don't get people, we don't get good listeners. And now this discussion forum, these kind of discussions that this ELSC course provides, this discussion, gives us a rare opportunity of unlocking our heart, opening our mind to talk to the world. And that's why if we just give them support, we create the talk-rich environment, we give them challenging inputs which are very near and dear to their heart, inputs which are known to them, inputs on which they are very much concerned, they will be happy to speak. They will forget their grammar. They will forget the sentence structure. Because here the purpose is to communicate. Everybody, as I said just now, everybody wants a good listener. Unfortunately, in this world, we don't have good listeners. Everybody wants to speak. Nobody wants to listen. But this ELSC course gives us a chance to speak, a chance to unlock our heart, as I said just now, a chance to share our ideas with our colleagues. And by sharing our ideas with our colleagues in our own English, the English that we use, we can develop the culture of a dialogue. It is a culture of conversation, a culture of dialogue, a culture of developing our oracy, a culture of bonding with other people. And that's why this ELSC course has not only a linguistic aspect, it is a social aspect. It is an unifying force that is unifying all the teachers of Telangana. And that's why we should take it from that particular angle. And that will serve our purpose. By interacting with others, you release your emotion, and while releasing your emotion, you are using English without knowing that you are using English. Or think of the other question, how do maths games develop socio-emotional skills in children? Can you elaborate your answer to specific examples based on your personal experience, text to self? And that is another aspects that can help the participants a lot. Now, on the basis of the discussion, we have to conclude with a few guiding principles once again. The first principle, the facilitator should learn as much as possible about the topic being discussed. I know this is a very challenging task for the facilitators, but this is a must. Because if the topic is on air pollution, then as a facilitator, I should not confine myself with the 2 videos and 2 articles mentioned in the lesson. I must know more. Because when I'm referring to the second slide of, I'm just repeating this Pacham Polisari. I'm not promoting it, but I'm repeating it time and again. That when I ask the participants to talk about the Pacham Polisari of Telangana, I should know about the other saris of other states of India. Otherwise, I will be in trouble. Somebody may be very familiar with the studies for which which are particularly special to Karnataka, for example. Or somebody may be very familiar with the studies which is a symbol, which is very popular in Gujarat, for example. Or somebody may be familiar with studies which is popular in Assam. Somebody introduces that, while the discussion goes on about the Pachampoli study, about the geometrical shapes and like that. Somebody says, oh yes, I know this. In Assam, for example, they call Mekhela Chador and the Muga and silk, which is very famous, and start speaking about that. No. If as a facilitator, I am not familiar with Mekhela Chador, I am not familiar with Kanjivaram sarees, I am not familiar with sarees popular in Gujarat, for example, then I won't be in a position to help the participants. That's why the first guiding principle is that the facilitator should learn as much as possible about the topic being discussed. Second principle, the facilitator should inspire all the participants to take part in the discussion. Now, as a facilitator, you must have a fair idea of the level of the participants. And therefore, you can easily, that's why you should always try to inspire others also. And they may be at different levels, but we should help them. And third also is equally important. The facilitator should ensure that arguments are based on ideas and opinions, not on personalities. Oh, he is a senior teacher and senior participant, and that's why I should not oppose him. Or just because he's a junior participant, what does he know? I know a lot about the topic. That should not, at least you should ensure that that kind of sentiment should not be take place. Whatever whatever arguments a participant puts forward, that must be based on ideas and opinions. They may be right or wrong, but it should be based on their opinions. And they must have enough justification for that. And as a facilitator, you must ensure that they give proper, appropriate, and very concise or very precise, they express their opinions in a very precise manner. Of course, sometimes, people have a habit of going around and around. In that case, very tactfully, you should bring it to the main point. And the facilitator should play a neutral role during the discussion. That is equally important. Suppose in the earlier topic, which was referring to learning a language from friends and not from the class. The example that I showed from the ELSC Unit 3. Now there is a question of language. That language should not be taught by force or can't be taught by force. Now in that case, it may so happen that that you have your own personal opinion about language, but please forget that. You have to, because you are a moderator. And as a moderator, you must take a natural role. In your personal life, you may have your own opinions, no harm. But here, you are on a public platform. Your role is that of a facilitator to sustain the discussion, and that's why he or she must be neutral. And controversial issues should be handled with sensitivity. There may be some controversial issues. For example, the question of gender sensitivity. Especially in the case of social science, it may so happen that in social science we discuss a number of burning issues, and in that case, our intention is not to justify or not to propagate our ideology. Our objective is to allow the language to play, to allow the language to flow. And for that, the controversial issues should be handled sensitively, with sensitivity, so that nobody feels hurt. Nobody feels that my point must be accepted by others. There is nothing right or wrong. Our focus is not on the content. Our focus is not on the grammar. Our focus is on the message. Our focus is on the language that is being used, because we are using the content as a means to an end. Any content will do, whether it is from the physical science, or whether it is from biological science, or whether it is from maths or social science, whatever it may be. That is not important. We are using those contents from those disciplines. We are using different themes so that language takes place during the discussion forum, and all the participants get a chance to use the language. Now, you see, Odyssey is the middle. On the top, there is fluency. And the bottom, there is grammar. And it makes a full circle. In the beginning, when I started my talk, I referred to fluency and grammar, because we must be very clear as a facilitator that our primary concern is fluency. Because ELC is a program which is based on the notion that a language enrichment can take place only when fluency gets the upper hand. Because we know our participants, they are not new to English. They know English. All of them, they have studied English as a subject in the schools. They know the subject, verb, object, or whether it is subject, verb, object, or subject, object, verb. They know. They know that in the sentence structure there is a difference between the sentence structure of Telugu and sentence structure of English. They know that in English you have transitive verb, non-transitive verb, all these things. And therefore, language grammar is not a problem for them. The problem is that they were told that English is not good. And that gave a wrong impression. And our objective is to build that confidence. Yes, I can do. And here is the chance. Here I can do, I can develop, I can enrich my language capability by going through this course. And therefore comes the question of fluency. Always we should remember that these are not the beginners. They are not the beginners so far as the English is concerned. They know English. They know a lot about English. And the topics on which we are, or the themes which we are using, especially for the secondary level, the themes we are using, for example, themes like air pollution, water pollution, or themes from maths. Now, these themes, they have been teaching in Telugu for years together. And therefore, who are we to teach them these themes? Who are we to tell them about different principles, different theorems of geometry, and different aspects of maths? What do you mean by mathematical reasoning? They know. Some of them know these things better than we know. Only problem is that they were doing it in Telugu till today. From tomorrow, they have to do it in English. And therefore, please don't make it a content-heavy course. The course has been designed in such a way that the content has been used as a means to use this to use English. Even for biological science, a theme like biomagnification and antibiotic resistance. Now, antibiotic resistance and biomagnification, this is no, I find at least bioidentification as very much technical. But antibiotic, even a villager knows antibiotic. Nobody says, I don't know the Telugu equivalent of antibiotic, but everybody knows, but nobody uses the Telugu word. They will call antibiotic. Oh, we should, you say there is some problem. That's why you went to a doctor and he or she prescribed antibiotic. Start with antibiotic and then go on and introduces, about how antibiotic resistance is highlighted in a particular video, or the question, or for example, there is an article on presence of mercury in birds near thermal power plants in Maharashtra paves way for modern analysis. That is one task. Now, thermal power, mercury, and these things, now they are used in this biological science, in this module. Now, these topics, our teachers, our participants have been teaching these topics in through the medium of Telugu for so many years. Now we are using this for English, and that's why they can do it quite easily. And or for example, when there is a question of the migration, immigration, emigration. Now you see, these are the three words: migration, immigration, and emigration. Now, our participants are familiar with these things. That migration, there is a difference between migration and immigration. You go to the international airport, there you go to the immigration counter. You don't go to the migration counter. Now, the equivalent of these words, or even some of these words, are used even in our own language. And therefore, start with the known, go to the unknown. And this is the way in which fluency can be developed. And then the question of grammar, already discussed it. Grammar is there, but grammar in the context, and we are not interested in the conscious teaching of grammar. And therefore, on the top, you have fluency, in the bottom, you have grammar, and in between the two, oracy. And oracy is the essence of any communication. No oracy, no communication. And ELC gives a chance to our participants to develop the skills of oracy. Thank you. I finished it. If there's any question, I'll be happy to answer these questions. Should I stop sharing the screen?
Yes, sir. I think we can do that. Stop sharing this.
I can't hear you.
I'm saying stop sharing the screen, sir.
Okay.
Always there is that. So many thank you, sir. One after the other.
We have 2 minutes left. Any question or any clarification? As the topic itself was the question of generating dialogues, and the question of the developing oracy among adult participants. Therefore, the focus is on adult participants, not children.
Sir, shall we end the call then?
Yeah, I think my presentation is over and the main points, because there are two aspects. So there, one was the question of what is oracy and what do you mean by developing oracy among adult participants, different strategies with reference to the themes that we have in our ELC course, both for elementary and for secondary.
Shall we end then, sir?
Yes. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for joining. Thank you so much. Teams. I sent it, no? ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಗೊತ್ತು ಮಿಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೇನೆ.